Well, hello once again, everyone. It's your boy Jingles Roscoe with another speed drawing. And today I decided that I wanted to draw one of my favorite characters from one of my favorite cartoons growing up, Goliath, from the cartoon Gargoyles. Here we go. Alright, now for some of my younger viewers, you might not be familiar with Goliath and Gargoyles and all of that. So, for those who are not familiar, let me see if I can remember how the opening goes, and it'll explain everything. So, 1,000 years ago, superstition and the sword ruled. It was a time of darkness. It was a world of fear. It was the age of gargoyles. Stone by day, warriors by night. They were betrayed by the humans they had sworn to protect, frozen in stone by a magic spell for 1,000 years. Now, in Manhattan, the spell is broken, and they live again. It was like one of my most favorite shows ever back in the day. And so anyway, so I decided to draw Goliath. He is the leader of the Gargoyles. And he was definitely one of my favorite characters. Not my most favorite. And I'll explain who some of the other Gargoyles were. Actually, first, let's talk about the setting of Gargoyles. So, Gargoyles starts off 1,000 years ago in Scotland. Where the gargoyles are magical beasts that help protect a castle out in Scotland. And the gargoyles, they're led by Goliath, who is sworn to protect the family and the kingdom that he's stationed at, him and his clan. And while what happened was that somebody, one of the people that he was protecting, the people, they protect the gargoyles who are frozen as stone statues during the day, and at night they free themselves, and then they go and they protect at night. And one of the people had betrayed the people of the castle, and they got people inside the castle, and they destroyed most of the gargoyles while they were asleep in stone. Somehow Goliath woke up before he was destroyed, and they fought back. And what ended up happening was that one of the court wizard or whatever, he thought that the gargoyles were responsible for the death of the princess at the castle, but it turns out that the princess was fine and was actually rescued by Goliath in the end. And what the wizard had done was frozen the rest of the gargoyles that were left. There was like 4 of them, or 5 of them, and he froze them permanently in stone with a magic spell that specified that they would have to be frozen in stone until the castle rose above the clouds, right? And so Goliath finds what's left of his family frozen in stone, and he's like, "Hey, freeze me in stone too." And you know, if ever this spell is broken, then we can all be together again. And then so in modern day, quote unquote, because it was the 90s, a businessman named David Xanatos finds the gargoyles and believes in the old ancient story. Oh, they say that if you bring the castle above the clouds, then they'll be freed or whatever. And he's like, okay. And he's a very, very successful businessman. He's also ends up being one of the main protagonists of the series. he was able to pretty much purchase what was left of the castle, and got all the pieces and brought him up to this giant skyscraper that was really tall, so it was like physically above the cloud line. And when he got him up there, then the spell was broken, and then they were freed and now live in modern day Manhattan, and kind of protect it as watchful guardians, silent protectors, dark knights, whatever. And Goliath was the only one that actually had a name at that point. But then after exploring the city and stuff, they all took on names for themselves, and they all named themselves after locations in New York. And so there was the older one, which was named Hudson. There was the red one, he was Brooklyn. There was the chubby one, who was named Broadway. There was the young smart one, and he was Lexington. And then they had their like gargoyle dog that was called Bronx. And Brooklyn was my favorite for little more than because he was the red one, and red's my favorite color. If I were to watch the series now, I might prefer one of the others. Because I also like Broadway because he's a big boy, and I've always been a big boy too. And wouldn't you like to be a big boy too? Anyway, so Goliath I liked a lot because he was the leader. Was definitely one of the coolest ones. But he was also voiced by Keith David, who is a voice actor that has been in a lot of shows, video games. So a lot of people will know him if they watch Princess and the Frog. He was the Shadow Man on that. And I love his voice. He's got one of the most iconic voices in voice acting. And every time I ever heard his voice anywhere after this show, I was just like, that just sounds like Goliath. That's just Goliath again. But I didn't complain because I loved Goliath, and I love Keith David's voice. And I will always be there to support him in whatever role he happens to be in. He's been like Spawn in the Spawn cartoons. He was the Arbiter in the Halo games, and he played a fictional version of himself in oh gosh, what games were they? Is Saints Row, in the Saints Row games. And so he's awesome, and I love him. And anyway, he's got like the coolest voice ever. And so as a result, Goliath had one of the coolest voices ever. But the show itself was really cool too. Because it was definitely like, it had heavier elements and more mature elements to it than most of the shows that were going on at the time. It took place during the Disney afternoon, which, once again, anybody not familiar with the Disney afternoon was a block of cartoons that happened after school, and it had some of Disney's most popular cartoons that came out at the time. It had DuckTales, it had Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, it had Tailspin, it had Darkwing Duck, it had Gummy Bears, although not many people remember Gummy Bears, but I remember Gummy Bears. And it had Gargoyles. And a lot of kids that consider themselves too old for those other baby shows like Tailspin and those ones, even they were like, man, like Gargoyles is the coolest thing ever. And it's super awesome. And I don't know if they have any like DVD sets or anything, but I want to get me a hold of that someday. But Goliath here, he was very interesting because, well, it's been a while since I've drawn a guy, and so I was like, I feel like I need to draw a guy again. And I picked Goliath because I came across a video, not more than like a few days ago, that was all like, hey, there's things that you don't remember about gargoyles, or there's interesting facts about gargoyles. And I watched it, I was all like, man, I love gargoyles. And I just like, I have to draw Goliath because I love him so much. So yeah, that's the reason why I decided to draw him. This was fun because I almost never draw like underlighting on characters, because most characters I ever draw are around during the daytime, but during the day the gargoyles are asleep in their stone forms, so I have to draw Goliath during the nighttime. And he watches the city from like a perch, and so he'd be underlighted. I'm delighted. And so yeah, that was an interesting and different thing. I didn't color the lines this time just because I felt with all the darker colors it kind of would be just a little extra that I didn't think would look too good anyway. But what I did do is I did like another thing that I don't normally do, which is a second like even darker shading layer, which I think looked and turned out pretty cool. It was pretty quick, pretty simple. This actually, I was surprised how quickly I was able to do this, because the pose that I chose for him was definitely a more complicated one than I'm used to doing, but I'm trying to push myself, trying to improve myself, trying to get a little bit better at like interesting and unique poses and stuff like that. So yeah, this is kind of a shorter video, especially from last time, but I felt like I didn't really have an idea for another let's get better at drawing video. I felt like I think I need to do just a regular old speed drawing. So here it was, and I'm actually really happy with it. I'm pretty pleased. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching while I kind of gushed over gargoyles and how much I miss it. Yeah, if you guys have any suggestions of like characters that you'd like me to draw, feel free to leave them in the comments. I always read them. I always check them out. And I try to respond to as many as I can. And yeah, if it's I'll decide whether or not I actually want to draw the characters anyway, because ultimately it's my decision. You can't make me do anything. I only have me that makes me do things. But yes. Thank you for watching. I'm done rambling now. I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope to have another video for you real soon.